Morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. Hopefully I can help you guys get the energy up a little bit. I know it's kind of first thing in the morning. As I already mentioned, I love attention. Please follow me on Twitter. I can't guarantee the content will be interesting at all, but there's a couple good jokes in there. So what am I going to talk to you guys about today? I'm going to talk about how to build the right thing. And as I get started, I realize that I think I hit play on the wrong deck. All I'm missing is the intro part, so I'm just going to talk about myself during this slide, and so you guys can deal with that. Hi, I'm Hampton. You guys, I don't know how many people here use Sass or have any idea that, okay, so is that why most of you guys showed up? I'm the guy that started Sass. It was a dumb, weird idea, and has turned out to be apparently a really clever, dumb idea. So that's why they let me get up here and talk to you guys. Also, I built a couple other things that we'll kind of be talking about here that I'm pretty proud of, that are maybe less obvious. So yeah, anyhow, and I live here in the city. If you tweeted me, I'm always looking to hang out, come to meetups, talk at whatever. I don't care. I'm a pretty approachable guy. Except after this, I do actually have to go catch a flight like immediately because I'm that important. But it is true, so I'm going to be like, yeah, so, how to build the right thing, right? That's what I'm talking about here. I'm kind of one half programmer and the other half product developer, because there's very few programmers that in some level are not having to actually make some very serious product decisions. A lot of times, like, I find that in modern programming and what we're doing here, technical issues are not the problem. Like, it's not that we're just hitting things, you're like, oh, that's just not possible. I mean, maybe if you're trying to build an AI, Skynet kind of situation, you might be there. Or we're going to crawl the whole internet with one machine. I don't know. You might invent some problems for yourself. But primarily the issue is, like, what are we building? Why are we building it? Is it the right thing to build? But obviously, there's you get into some definition problems here. And the people who work for me hear this all the time, because usually I'll hear an argument start, nerd debate about something, and usually the main issue will be that they didn't properly they weren't arguing about the same thing. They hadn't really thought about, hey, what are we really talking about here? Obviously in what I'm proposing here, what is the right thing? What makes something right? This is the one that I think is really, really, really hard for engineers, including myself, to swallow. It's not necessarily about quality. Quality is actually not that important in the long run. Because quality without clear understanding is meaningless. So like, if I just build it correctly, but I don't really understand why or how or what are the trade-offs, why am I doing it this way, you end up building the wrong thing. I mean, we'll get to this a little later, but I'm sure lots of people here have worked very hard on some project and then it just completely fell flat. You thought it was the most clever code, it was the most beautiful thing you've ever written, then it just kind of died before it ever went out. And so here's some things that would be considered quality. I assume people in this room would agree, but don't mean shit about how it actually ends up being a success or not. 100% test coverage. This is something I demand, but it doesn't really change if I'm building the right thing or not. That doesn't help. This is quality. This is not the right thing necessarily. If it's fully responsive, the newest blank framework, so we'll go with functional or JavaScript, more documentation than the competition, more features, more style. These are things of quality that in the end generally have very little difference. They're all important. Obviously, most people are paid to worry about these things, including myself. But I feel like I have to deal with myself a lot where I'm like, this kind of, in some ways, ends up, the success of the product, it doesn't matter, really. Long-term success, sure, maintainability. If you're building the right thing, then all these things make it better, or can. Things that you can do that will not actually, or in some situations, if you're making the right trade-offs, right? If you're figuring out what you're doing, these could be correct. It could be ugly. That could be right for your product. It could be very limited in what it does. It could be old technology. You could build it on a very, very old, terrible version of Java for some reason. But maybe there's some constraints that would actually be the right thing to do in some situations. Maybe it's just too easy. This is a big one. I actually think that engineers are typically puzzle solvers, and we want to solve a good puzzle. We don't want to do it. We don't want to do the easiest crossword puzzle. So we're like, oh, I'm going to challenge myself. But sometimes you should just do the lame-o thing. Sometimes one PHP file is actually the right answer. Maybe it's messy. Maybe it's confusing even. That can actually be. A lot of times when my company, we do a lot of stuff with enterprise companies, and sometimes you need to make it look a little confusing. They actually like it. It makes it seem more important. They'll actually respond positively to this. If you think, man, I just paid $1 million for this thing, it better not be 1, 2, 3 easy wizard. Like, what the hell did I just buy? That's nothing. It needs to look really scary a little bit. I need to be afraid of it. It could even be slow. It could be simplistic and complicated. So all these things could be the right. Obviously, a lot of times they're not, clearly. But you have to be okay with these things. I'm talking a lot about fights in my own head with myself when we're designing stuff. I'm like, but come on, we could just make it simple. I could put in cool animations, and then I'm like, God, that's probably the wrong thing to do. And so we're going to talk about good products. I just want to kind of go through a hall of fame of failures. Some of them good, some of them, well, they should stay dead. HD DVDs. Oh, you can't really see that. Well, that's a picture of HD DVD player. Total flop. Blu-ray kind of won, but nobody really won. So this was a great technology. They invested billions of dollars into this, and nobody it died. Betamax, another good one in this kind of category of format wars. Lots of engineers spent forever and ever and ever, just years of their lives working on this. I mean, can you imagine? And then just due to some Hollywood executives kind of happening to have a better relationship with Sony, then Blu-ray wins. So fuck off, engineers. That's what you get. Another one, a beautiful device, Newton. Man, so far ahead of its time. I mean, the iPhones and Androids we're all carrying are absolutely, this is the precursor to those things. Total flop, super expensive, too slow, technology wasn't right, people didn't really know what to do with it. But super well respected, but total flop, right? One that I think should stay dead, this was a huge, they spent tons of money. It's like Pepsi Clear. They kind of put it out, spent a ton of money on it, thinking, hey, people love lifesavers. Don't we want a liquid form in our mouths? So, just look at that. It's so funny. How did they miss that this is gross? I don't know. I think it's, whenever I show this slide, it always gets a laugh because you're just like, no, absolutely not. But no, some executives continue on that. There's some things, like this, there are beautiful designs. The DeLorean was actually long before Back to the Future. I think they made the last DeLorean in, I think it was like 79 or something. Back to the Future didn't happen until much later. They'd already, I think a lot of, at least my age, I'm like 30, so I only saw Back to the Future, and I figured that was a car that existed around then. No, huge flop. This guy from GM Chrysler, was it? There you go. Was like, hey, screw you, Detroit. I'm going to go build my own car company. We're going to do it better. So he built American Motor Company? No, what was it called? Something like that. Anyhow. But they built the DeLorean. It was their first car, and nobody wanted to buy them, and they broke down a lot. And Detroit won that round. I think they've lost subsequent rounds. But here's this car. Now it's iconic. It's beautiful, right? But no, he challenged Detroit and lost. And obviously there's these things, and like I mentioned before, it's tons of stuff you guys have done, hobby projects, things that work, that you put your heart into, that you build prototypes for. You're trying to pitch your boss, and they're like, nope. And honestly, all of those things, they weren't building the right thing for that time, right? With those right constraints. Each and every one of them, in my opinion, the timing was just off, right? The DeLorean was cool. It had cool, whatever. It was very sexy. It wasn't a practical car for people, so they didn't want it, right? They kind of went on sexy sports car-y thing instead of something practical, where maybe that would have actually worked, right? Newton tried to go a little further than maybe it should have, maybe something a little simpler, like the Palm Pilot that came out soon after, much smaller, much lighter, did less. Anyhow, so, but I think here we've all been involved in failures. Also, we can talk about some successes to make this, to stop this from being such a depressing talk. I mean, this is the first one that comes to mind when I think about just the right product at the exact right time. The universe was waiting for this. There'd been a couple music players out there. They were clunky. They weren't right. The form factor was a little weird. Something was off, right? They just didn't, I don't know, did anybody, what were they? Something DJ? I had one of them, it's like a giant, huge hard drive thing that was all like plasticky and rubbery. And it held like 1,000 songs. And then this came out and held 1,000 songs, was super easy to use, didn't make like, the other one made lots of noises and stuff, ran out of batteries. So, but here's this design. It didn't do a lot. There were no apps. Couldn't play games on it, just played music. And it was just this very simple design for how to play music. Things had come before it and things came after it, but it just hit. It's just that timing. It was the right thing. They probably could have put a color screen in this era, right? They could have done like a bright, we had color screens back then. But no, that would have raised the price. That wouldn't hit it right. I mean, that wouldn't, they made a trade-off. Let's go with something a little simpler. Model T, not the first car at all. The first car that could be affordably made. Hit at exactly the right time. Just saw that opening. There were faster cars. There were sexier cars. There were more colorful cars, because this only came out in color. But it was the right thing at the right time. At that moment in history, coming out with a cheap car, with the American economy booming, and having the goal of making it affordable for everyday workers, just created a whole industry, just changed how America is built by infrastructure, everything. So obviously, really good timing on that one. Coca-Cola. I think a lot of people don't know this. Pepsi is only about, I think, 20 or 30 years younger than Coke. People's impression is that Pepsi is new. It's not. They're both from pharmacies and had the very similar lineage. But Coke, by awesome management and execution and branding and advertising, the product isn't necessarily better, right? There was tons of other stuff out there, right? But by this concerted effort of just pure execution, this reminds me of, so I'll go back to mentioning kind of enterprise software, because that's everyone's favorite topic. There's so many companies that have a crappy product, end up making a lot of money just because they know how to sell it, train people on it, and get it out there. It doesn't really matter in that market exactly how good the tech is. Now I'm trying to build good tech and see if we can beat them. But it's execution, right? They would go into pharmacies, make deals with the local pharmacists, give them a really good deal, sell them the thing, show them how to set it up, put a sign in the window. People knew, right? That's all about execution. Had nothing to do with the taste itself. Obviously, the taste is lovely, I guess, but I'll drink fucking anything. It's a Red Bull. And then obviously, when you think about greatest design things on the planet, I just, this one I think goes without saying. So let me talk a little bit about Sass. So this is the new logo, by the way. I don't know if anybody saw the new launched website. It's very nice now. Gina Bolton's speaking, I think, later today. She's part of the design team that did this. Anyhow, but let's travel back in time to 2006. And, all we had was CSS2. CSS2 had a couple new features over CSS1. And, it basically kind of looked like this. So that was CSS2. And then I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. CSS3. Yes, this is awesome. I can't wait to see what new features they add to CSS. And it looks like this. They didn't change the language. They just added like fucking border radius. I hate you, and gradients. Which, by the way, helped a lot. We didn't have to do little images in the corners and any tricks like that. And we got Web 2.0 out of that. Gradients around the corners, I know. Yeah, but they didn't change the language, and that pissed me off. So, because I was writing stuff like this, and it's post.post.post.post.post, and that drove me crazy. That's dumb. I'm a programmer. I write dry stuff. I'm a Rails guy. I don't repeat my code. So I'm like, why can't it look like this? Right? That's clearly what it should be, because there's posts and then there's things inside of posts. This is dumb. It made me sad that they hadn't done that. And I honestly thought it was like, all right, like somebody's done this. Somebody's built this. Come on, right? this exists. And so we come to our second maxim from a crazed programmer. If you're surprised it doesn't exist, you're on to something really good. That is great. If you're just like, oh, well, there's got to be a thing, you Google for it, you're like, oh, it doesn't exist. Huh. Yes, do think more. Don't go, oh, I'm just gonna go over here now. No, do it. You've got the scent. You got the scent. Now figure out why. Why doesn't it exist? Is it just because nobody did it, which is usually the case, or is there some, obviously like, oh, why is my healthcare expensive? That's not like a weekend project to fix. So I mean, use your brain, right? But I mean, if you're like, I wish there was a library to do this, or gosh, if I only had an app that could do something, right? Those are obviously the ones that you guys can affect. But this, don't forget this. Embed this in your head next time you think, why doesn't this exist? Everybody, you done it? Burn it into your brains? Okay, good. So if that's all you remember about this, is that I talked quickly, drank Red Bull, and then you remembered this. We're good. So, why can't I just do this, right? Just go build it. I convinced Nathan Weizenbaum that this was a good idea and that he should build me a parser, because I'm not the kind of programmer who can build something like this. But then we started thinking, we're like, well, I mean, if we're doing this, right? And then it just exploded what you could pull off. And a couple, or so obviously this is one of my favorites. I don't think actually a lot of even people who write Sass know this one, but all those fonts, font dash size, font dash weight, you can nest inside that if you put a colon on the attribute thing. And then you've just grouped together your font definition. Isn't that nice? That's right. Yeah, for some reason it's just one that I think people just don't see a lot. Yeah, so, don't just complain, fix it, obviously, right? Go do it. Which is why I built Sass all by myself. No, not at all. Actually, I did the first, full admission that I always make. I did the first 2 commits where I kind of modeled out some objects that are roughly CSS, and then I wrote a file that was kind of a spec proposal for what I thought it could look like. And then I convinced, so it was the next slide, it was supposed to be up there. And then Nathan Weizenbaum, this just brilliant guy, he was 17 at the time, he was helping with Haml and just went crazy. At RailsConf 2006, I guess, I convinced him, and then he just started building and building and building, and he's like, hey, how about functions? And I'm like, yeah, let's do functions, that sounds great. He's like, I want this. I'm like, yes, high five, but make it like that. And the truth is, if I developed Sass, you wouldn't have heard of it today. It wouldn't exist. Like, just if I had not had him do it, if I had built my own little crappy whatever thing, it wouldn't have lasted. I mean, it's been 7 years now. Actually, coming up November 23rd, I think, is Sass Day. I hang out with a lot of people who are pretty obsessed with Sass, so I know stuff like this. But I have to admit, that's not my talent, right? I'm not a guy who writes a really efficient parser. I don't just dream up a new function thing and spend all weekend working on it. I'm not that guy. I like stuff that you can touch and is kind of easy to launch. That's how I function in life. So, find people who do what you don't. If you met the people that work at my company, there is nobody like me. I know that we see people hire, like, I hate it when I see somebody hiring somebody and they're doing tests that they could pass. I try to give tests that I would fail, or a programming thing that I thought I did a bad job at, because I want to deck a team in both open source and companies that they just think differently than me. As a matter of fact, sometimes in ways that might enrage me or I might think are bad. But that tension, that disagreement, and those different skill sets are what really can make a team awesome, in my opinion. I'm going to talk now about my next rule, which is to listen to people who are bitching. That is another, that when you get that little whiff and you're like, I think there's an idea here. If you're ever out at a bar and when your friend's like, oh my God, I wish blank, it's a similar thing to you doing it. But when people are complaining, they're like, oh, Instagram, I wish it could do this thing or whatever, right? And you're like, what? Yes. And actually, this one happened to me in a very, very big way. I listened to a friend of mine complain, and her name's Melissa Kaita, And she said, "Ugh, I hate reading Wikipedia on my phone." She'd just gotten the new iPhone. It was the original iPhone. And I didn't have an iPhone. And we were a little drunk. And she was complaining about this. And I was like, I'll fix that. So I actually just spent a weekend putting together a prototype, which basically just took this and turned it into this. I wanted to get it done quickly. So I did not want to build an editing, user management, any of those things. I'm like, hey, let me solve her problem, which she actually asked for, which is I'm trying to read an article and I'm having to pinch and zoom. Sorry, Ghost of Steve Jobs. It's not fun. It's not the same thing. So I wanted to take kind of the simplest approach that I think would work, which I thought, hey, pretty much everybody just reads Wikipedia. Why do anything else? And so I kind of set some goals for myself. I was like, I'm going to have one weekend to get this done because I'm lazy. So I just want to get it up. I'm going to focus on reading because I thought, well, that's pretty much what people do on Wikipedia, especially while mobile. This is a classic trap that I think a lot of that I'm glad I didn't fall into because I got tempted. Wiki text is the markup that you write Wikipedia articles in, and there is only one part. Well, there's some projects that propose that they parse wiki text. They do not. For the crazy template stuff, you should go check out some of the stuff Wikipedians do with this weirdo language, like just brackets go for miles and it calls out to whatever something. And there's only one good parser for it, is what I realized. And I was like, I could write one, but the only good one was MediaWiki itself, the thing that powers Wiki. That's the only thing that'll do it. Like, there is none of those projects you've seen. They're all just like the links. They'll do links in a citation, but no, this stuff gets deep. But so I was like, okay, I can't like start rabbit holing. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can patch and get it to the point where it'll work. And I was like, no. So what I ended up doing was building kind of a hybrid app with a dumb proxy server. I just went to MediaWiki, like their install itself, and said, hey, give me the HTML you want. Right? Like, you deal with your templates and all that stuff. I'm gonna short circuit this a little bit and keep it simpler for myself. And also, I paid this guy Sean Allison, I think $1,000 to write all the CSS. So it was basically he's a super brilliant guy. One of the guys that kind of inspired me to build tools like Sass, because he was badass and needed badass tools. But I just called this guy up and I'm like, hey, so I have all this existing markup and you're a ninja. How about you just make tables and stuff work? Like, can you just make like those info boxes look nice and just sort it out for me? And he took like a day. For him, it was a day, and he just went like all crazy, and then got it done, and then checked that box off. And so I threw it in the iPhone App Store. It was called Wikipedia for your iPhone. It was the early days of the App Store, and it was priced at $1.99, and I sold 50,000 of them in the first month. So you're right, I do own a home now. I took a couple months off. Actually, I did quit my job on this, or my original job, because I was like, yeah, I'm doing all right. So I was like, I did not expect this. I just thought I was doing a thing for my friend, right? But people at that point were paying $2 for this. So that was back in the day when we'd pay for apps like I want to read Wikipedia. So profit, there's your profit. People normally have a question mark. Here are problems, fix it, profit is actually the answer. And but then kind of after 3 to 4 months, obviously people are like, more and more paid ones came out, some more expensive, some cheaper. I started lowering the price. I'm like, all right, this is kind of dumb that we're charging for this. And then as I'm kind of debating myself on this, I get a phone call from a lawyer at the Wikimedia Foundation who said that they were gonna sue me if I didn't take my app down. And so I'm like on the phone like, okay, I'm not the kind of guy who likes to get in trouble. I'm like a Boy Scout, though not really. But like I don't, like police look at me funny and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, please don't arrest me. I don't know what I did. But so when a lawyer calls you up, he's like, yes, I'm with the Wikimedia Foundation. There's a cease and desist. We're gonna have to mail you a thing and you need an immediate takedown. I'm like, So one of the best smartest fucking things I ever said was during this call when I'm like scared, is I was like, well, do you want my app? You could buy it. And he's like, well, let me put you in touch with the CTO. So I talked to Brian Vibber and the CTO, and he's like, I like this app. Would you work with us? And I was like, yes. I was like, but you have to buy the app. And then he's like, well, how much? We're Wikipedia, we don't really buy apps. And I was like, this is full admission time. Thanks, video camera time. I think I said some ridiculously high number. Whatever. I don't know. I was such an idiot. And then he like looked at me like I was insane. And then I was like, $4,000. And then he's like, all right, we'll do a signing bonus. And I'm like, yes, sold my first company. Yes. So yes, Wikipedia bought my application for like no money. No, but it was awesome, right? Like they were like, hey, you know, we'll pay you to develop this into something we can actually launch and scale and make it official. So I got to do that. That's awesome. Like, holy shit. And, you know, so this is like solutions only come from problems. You know, obviously seeing a theme here, right? When there's a problem, you can't fix something's not working, right? But here was this horrible problem. But like, that was one of the best things that's ever happened in my career. And that was because the lawyer was trying to sue me. If he had not done that, if he had just not attempted to sue me, I wouldn't be talking to you about this. This would just be like a weird side note. Actually, the app would probably just keep making me money. But yeah, you know, but this is for real. Like when something goes, and this is when you know, people like to I feel like they're always talking about failure is really good. Let's pivot. It's okay. Fail fast. I don't really buy into that shit, by the way. Try to succeed. I don't know. Is this a crazy thing to say? Be like, oh, I failed. I'm not going to go quit my job forever and go live in a cave, I guess is the alternative that they're thinking. Anyhow, but when stuff isn't going right, use that, right? And I mean, I think that's when the pivots actually work. It'll be that something was going wrong and then they use it for their positive, right? And so this was something went wrong. My sales were tanking and a lawyer was trying to sue me. And I got a good job out of it and got to be the Wikipedia guy. And so I was there for 2 years. I assume I don't think I have to show a lot of screenshots or anything. I'm pretty sure you've used it before. Because there was 2 billion pages a month when I left. I think it's up to 4 now or 5, something like that. And it was awesome. Nobody knew I was there, right? You can't like put your name on it, right? Though God, I tried. But like, you know, you can't, it's one of those things where you're just kind of the monkey behind the scenes. You know, I was the main guy running the project. There were 3 servers doing this. And I just spent all my time scaling. I was just like, it's like logging infrastructure, then, you know, making sure restarts happen correctly, caching, internationalization. We're rolling out to all sorts of different languages over and over and over. And this was just, and I wasn't spending time on the design also. So sorry, it looked like crap for a long time. They actually have a proper designer on it now, so it looks pretty good. But, you know, I was spending all my time scaling, right? So I'm just like, I'm not really enjoying this job anymore. Like 2 years, like I wanted to do some cool stuff. You know, when you're like, hey, I'm the mobile Wikipedia guy, people are like, oh, can you do photo uploads? And then we can do landmark tagging. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. I gotta go, the logging thing's starting to smoke. I gotta go fix that. And you know, it was tons of code, but here was the trick. There was I knew in that application, there are 50 lines. You can still go look up the code. I think it's like models/parser. It was a MERB application. It was like models/parser/XHTML, I think. And that one file, for anybody who's ever used Nokogiri, that's basically all it was. It was just like, delete these things, move this around, and then throw this layout around it, right? So that's what the whole app really was. Now, there was tons of code, all doing crazy management stuff and failovers and logic and blah, 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 health checks. And, you know, I'm sure you guys are familiar with writing some of this stuff. Actually, I guess it's HTML5DevConf, so some of you guys are like, what the hell are you talking about? I write browser games. Sorry, I think that's how browser game people must sound. But there was only 50 lines that mattered, right? And so I'm like, this is weird. Like, I had to do all this work, 2 years of me suffering, you know, things would fall over, I'd get a phone call in the middle of the night kind of thing. And I'm like, you know, I bet some other people wish they had that. Which leads me to, you're not the only one. if you have a problem, you are probably not the only one. And I thought to myself, what if I built a platform that would have made building Wikipedia faster and better? So remember I said before that login didn't work? What if I could make that work? What if I could make editing work? What if I could just do those 50 lines? What would that be? Could I build that? And then I got a call from a guy here in San Francisco. I was living in England at the time, and a guy here in San Francisco was like, hey, I got this company. We just sold, it was to a small e-commerce shop. We just sold that we were going to build them a mobile site. I think we can build a toolkit out of this. Do you want to help? And that was like one of the best written emails apparently in history, because I didn't really need a job, but I was like, oh, give me access to the Git repo. And that was 3 years ago, and my life has been subsumed by those Git repos since then, because that turned into MoveWeb. So basically, MoveWeb helps big companies do exactly what I need to do at the Wikimedia Foundation. Big companies just can't, a lot of times they'll try a big rewrite, sometimes it succeeds. So if you're doing one, good luck. But it's often more complicated, right? Like you can't just, if you're an airline and you want to rebuild your website, you have to know the kiosks actually all run off that. And actually your ad network is served with a ping there. And the marketing campaign actually runs through those exact pages. And there's some guy with a graph that's all their TV ad spending. And if you just say, hey, we launched it, oh, sorry, your graph doesn't work anymore. And his whole annual bonus is tied up into this one graph, you don't launch. And even at the Wikimedia Foundation, this was a big problem for us, because you can't just rebuild the whole of Wikipedia. Like that is an old, solid piece of software with hundreds of people working on it, different branches and things and changes and languages and specific hacks and fixes. And so you can't just go, I'm going to rebuild the wiki parser, you know. So that's basically what MoveWeb does. We take this into this. But for me, this is like, holy shit, big companies. I spent last week filling out, I guess I shouldn't, this is recorded. I shouldn't say the name of the customer, a very large insurance company. I spent the whole week going through their security requirements documents, filling out all the various, what's our disaster plan, like how many different power backups do I have, kind of stuff. Just this, like this much, just question after question. We do a security compliance, this is the fun of enterprise. There is a security compliance thing I have to do where I have to, my ops people have to take a screenshot of it asking for a password. They have to type in a wrong password, hit enter, and then take a screenshot and add that to the security documentation to prove that they have a password. You have to screenshot it. Like, it's just mind-meltingly weird for a person who spent my career just being like, oh, fuck it, I'll do Wikipedia something. But you know, it's really interesting. I've gotten really passionate about it because it's the hard problem. I'm just gonna be mean to browser games, and they're lovely. I play them. I'm sorry for anybody who actually writes them. No, but like, that is a solvable problem. I mean, it's tough. There's a lot of creativity, you know, all sorts of, I mean, we could give whole talks on that, right? Obviously. But enterprise companies have real problems that are not just code related. You know, for me, that is a challenge of how do you change habits? How do you change the way people think? How do you solve these almost intractable problems? And I think the weird part is that my life and my product design thing, I mean, we stepped all the way through how I got here, and it's natural that I ended up doing this super weird thing I never thought I'd be doing. You know, I get to speak at fun conferences like this, but I also get to go speak at ones where the expo is like 9 times the size of that, and everybody has suits on and stuff. I like my suit jacket. Which, this is one of my other maxims. Take what you've learned and bring it into another market. There's a lot of nerds working on nerd problems. There's not a lot of nerds working on not nerd problems. That's a good way to put it. But obviously there's a bit of a hubris alert here, right? Because a lot of times our problems are more tractable because we understand them, right? You can enter in building something, and like when I starting Sass, I kind of knew, okay, I'm gonna write parser. This is like a thing. I need to get somebody help, but This is a tractable problem. Like, I can conceptualize of it. Going to another market, if you want to help lawnmower salespeople, I'm just making that one up. But if you're like, you have a friend who's into that and you're like, oh, inventory management's a problem and you have very specific needs and it should just be very simple. You're bitching about this. Okay, check. But obviously, not knowing anything is a big problem too, because learning that stuff is hard. There's veterans in those industries, and a lot of times it's like this for a reason. But hey, why not give it a try, right? And so, okay, I get to brag. No, have I been bragging this whole time? I don't know what you're talking about. But with MoveWeb, we got to go from 8 employees to 70 employees in 1.5 years with no funding, which is awesome. We're now at 100, but we did take funding, so whatever. I always want to change this to 2 years and up the number, but then I'm like, all right, fine, we have funding. I don't think that's not as impressive, right? No, but look, I was right. Other people had the problem. Yay! That was it, right? I had a problem. I thought, holy shit, maybe other people do. Opportunity opened, it's door, and you just walk through it. And so I solved my problems, and it turns out to be other people's problem too. And we've done it for a couple of companies, and then we've done it for a couple more. So that's that part. But I do have one more thing. Well, since there's a keynote going on next door that's totally stealing my thunder. This is a little off topic, but it's been gnawing at me, so I wanted to add a little rant here onto the end if you guys will humor me. So, this is the ranty part, because the rest of it was not at all. This is my plea for sanity. Not every site needs jQuery Foundation and jQuery UI and Angular and Backbone all in the same app all at once. I know browsers are fast, and I know JavaScript, we've all about 10 years ago discovered it's a real programming language that you can do actually cool stuff in. But what the shit is going on? It is out of control. Like, I'm starting today trying to make a campaign to give up the cruft. Simple, I just love simple, fast generated HTML with only JavaScript that's actually used on the page. So that date picker, maybe it should only appear on the page with the date picker. I don't know, maybe that JavaScript and CSS shouldn't be there on every page. Yeah. You go to performance talks and they're just like, oh, well, we all know that the real bottleneck is the client side. So here's a couple hacks to try to make it a little better. Why don't we just make it better, right? Like, we can actually just not throw all this shit into the front end. Servers are fast, browsers are fast, and this is not that JavaScript does not have its place, nor should, just some cool shit going on there. But what if you opened an HTML file and it just had HTML in it, and like one CSS file, and then one JavaScript file that loaded? Can you imagine that future? I was trying to find a good example site, and I couldn't find one. I was like, Craigslist, let's go there. Nope, jQuery UI. It's still ugly. What the fuck are they doing? That even Craigslist has gone to the dark side now. Some developer there is just like, oh, I want to have a little module show up on the forgot password page. So on every page on Craigslist, we're going to include this library. It's crazy, which is why I am proposing straight edge HTML. So the rules of the game are, yes, only the CSS that's actually used on your site. So use, and I'm part of the blame for this with Sass, right? Because it's just so easy. Import, whatever, fucking throw it all in. There are libraries, Susie's one of them, that only import what you use where you use it. Some crazy idea. Instead of just telling every browser out there that's ever used your page to parse everything over and over and over again. Oh my gosh, just think about that poor parser. Those browsers are just exhausted. Oh, jQuery, oh shit. Okay, they used 2 lines of it. Now I gotta go through 200K, compile it, try to understand it, linking. Okay, what? Oh, the page is a little slow? Wonder why. So the rules are, so basic CSS. You can write jQuery, by the way, that can go through the Clojure compiler, and it will only include the parts of jQuery that you use. You have to kind of do it right. but maybe we're professionals. I don't know, maybe we're all paid for this job. So if you do that and you have very straightforward JavaScript that's doing stuff on the page, and then I will allow you can throw down the bottom page Google Analytics because everybody wants that. And then it's just straightforward semantic HTML. Those are the rules of the game. If you've done that, you are now straight edge. And please tweet at me if you actually, my next project, I'm doing this. Because I want to stand up and say, like, just because we can do it doesn't mean we always should. And sometimes there's nothing wrong. Nobody ever spent 5 days debugging a straightforward HTML document, okay? I have spent 5 days trying to debug some crazy client-side event thing that goes weird on IE6 and then end up saying, fuck IE6. And then I realized that that's, in the enterprise market, like all the people who pay. Like there's an inverse relationship between browser version and how much they're willing to pay you. So yeah, that's straight edge HTML. I'm about to embark in my career on trying to actually build a couple of sites this way myself. Well, I guess my personal website is, but it's really crappy. So that doesn't really count because it doesn't do anything. Anyhow, all right, so that was that part of the rant. I think we're almost done, but we have 10 minutes or less for questions if people want to. Yes, I didn't have to.
Explain just the relationship between Sass and SCSS.
Good one. What is the relationship between Sass and SCSS? So, funny enough, last weekend was SassConf in New York, which was super surreal, by the way, to be like, oh my God, okay, this is real. No, and it was so funny. So during the Q&A period, somebody asked that question, and everyone in the room's like, because they're all Sass people, and they're just like, oh. And so me and Chris Epstein both stand up, and we're like, okay, we're gonna give an answer. And then the moderator's like, okay, we don't have any time. And so Twitter after that was just like, oh my God, they didn't answer. No. So you guys get the answer now. You didn't even have to go to SassConf. So the relationship is, so SCSS, the original way that Sass was built, it was a sub-project of Haml. Haml's an expert system for HTML that I mostly just built for myself, but some other people use. Makes it really easy to write, really straightforward, well-formed HTML. So it was a sub-project, and Haml's whitespace sensitive, so we're like, hey, fuck the brackets. So the original Sass syntax it was nested, and it didn't use brackets. Sorry, not brackets, whatever, curly braces, yeah. Then a little project called Los came along, and they were like, hey, let's be CSS compatible. We're not gonna try to do all the features that Sass has, but we'll just make it honestly, Les does most of the stuff I use it for, because I'm not a super ninja. Honestly, we all kind of had a come to Jesus moment with, okay, is all this, we'd put 4 years of work into the project at that point, and we're like, look, all this internal logic we've built, all these edge cases we've solved, it has nothing to do with whether or not it's CSS compatible. Like, curly braces aren't hard to add into the parser, so Nathan went and basically made it CSS compatible. So, now Sass, you can put in CSS, and that CSS will come back out on the other side. Because Sass is valid CSS now. So typically we use the word, we've kind of decided that's the direction we want to go. My project libsass, which is a C port, only supports the new CSS compatible syntax, which is SCSS. But the way we've kind of talked about it now, it got really confusing because we're like, oh, there's Sass and then SCSS, and then everyone was confused. So Sass is the language. The main syntax is CSS compatible. The extension is SCSS on those files. You can also use an older indentation-based, whitespace sensitive syntax we're going to continue to support in the main project. I still like that syntax, but we've definitely realized, when you're going into people, if you've been the person to bring Sass into your company, you either have to have a tech leader who's just like, okay, you're all learning the indented syntax, screw you all. And everyone's like, oh, okay, I gotta go learn now. But the great part about the SCSS is that your CSS files are fine as they are. So you can go to a CSS developer who's like, oh, I don't wanna learn anything new. And you're like, you don't have to. Hold on, I've hooked it up. Don't worry, just write CSS. And then you just go, do you wanna try nesting that? And then they do, and they're like, what the fuck? Because it's cool, right? The path of learning is just like, it was regular, and now I can do stuff. All the, like, you just upgraded my CSS. What the hell? You didn't tell me this is what learning was, which is entirely different than having to look at a new syntax, right? People just have a like, oh my god. I use SCSS now. My taste still tends towards the more minimalist stuff, but my taste isn't important. I have CSS developers whose taste are CSS. Yeah, I'm also, by the way, trying to get @include to be a shorter version. People who write that all day long, it drives me crazy. Yeah, so there's that. Any other questions about anything? You can ask about my jacket. Yes?
You totally just released some sort of feature that you're going to do soon. So would @import be a sort of nested scenario? We've got @import brackets or maybe a colon, and you're going to list your different imports. What else do you have in store for Sass?
Oh, see, Chris Epstein's the guy to ask about that. He's hanging around here. I think a lot of the stuff we're actually having to turn a lot of, well, obviously so getting libsass in working order. So libsass, Sass itself, the original project is written in Ruby. It is very, very slow if you have a large project. I don't know if anybody here has a large project, but particularly LinkedIn's a company that uses Sass, and I think they have 50 people who write Sass all day, and that's a lot of Sass to write. So it takes a couple hours to compile now. And then with our projects at MoveWeb, we include Sass, obviously, and we were using the Ruby version. And our customers are big companies, so there's just a lot of people doing this all day. They're certainly not straight edge HTML. Yeah, so I was like, holy shit, let's go write this in C. And so that's been going for a year now. It's going really well. There's still some stuff to sort out. Namely, Compass support's the biggest one. So there's a lot of work going into that now because we really want to get that. We're giving ourselves another like 9 months before it needs to be fully compatible with Sass 3.2. The new stuff coming in, a lot of it's also Compass. So it's actually the side projects that I think are getting a little more attention. Compass is just introducing, this is crazy by the way. So there's, what's the name of the site? CanIUseIt.com? The one that tells you what CanIUse.com, yeah. So Compass now, in the new version, so everybody used to complain that Compass would add all the vendor prefixes that existed. So if you use border radius, it will add all the ones that we needed 4 years ago. But only 0.1% of people need the dash WebKit one, right? Compass will now allow you to set a % of users that you want to address. So you can say, I'm willing to have 5% of my users it not work. And what that'll do is when it compiles all your stuff, we'll go through, look up the most recent survey results for the Can I Use stuff, and then dynamically decide in that release which vendor prefix you want. So you can say, I want to include 100% of people, and it will do all of them for you. If you're one of the people who are like, fuck IE, I don't want to support half these things, you can say, I'm fine with 10% not working. And then you get less vendor prefixes. So there's a lot of stuff going there, and also breaking up Compass. Compass is a singular giant project right now. It's kind of, everything comes with it. So kind of breaking that up into a more modular library. And then we're also putting a lot of, it's not fully launched yet, but there's gonna be sassregistry.com, where there's a lot of Sass projects. There's like CodePen and stuff to look at stuff, but there's a lot of like cool libraries that people are writing, but they're just kind of putting on Hacker News and then crossing their fingers. So we're actually gonna make a place where you can go register your Sass library and people can go download it. Designers who are not gonna go use Bower or whatever, they can just go download the Sass files and drop them into their project. So there's a lot of that kind of building out that ecosystem and community, because I think that's obviously what you have to do to, when something's at this point, you got to build out the community. You got to make sure the tooling around it's perfect. Yeah, so that's it. I think I'm out of time now, so I need to go catch my flight. So cool. Follow me. Let's be Twitter buddies. I'm not desperate. I'm not desperate. Please follow me. But thank you guys so much for listening to me rant. I appreciate it a lot.